This is something that from the beginning of when I started in the business, I talked to you about how when I first started, I wrote my own scripts, and then later on I told you that I wasn't even doing follow-up, right, till years after I had started. So I was basically quoting a customer, giving them an estimate, and then never calling them back, right? But what I was doing is I was going for the close. I was trying to book the move on every single call, right? Years later, I was able to introduce, what I taught you earlier, which is the 5X follow-up, right? After you give an estimate, call them back the 5 times. If you haven't already watched that, go back and watch estimate follow-up. But one thing didn't change, right? Even with the 5X follow-up, do you think that I stopped trying to go for the close on the first move? No, right? You still have to try to book it on the first move, right? So, maybe since we talked about the 5X estimate follow-up, you've been thinking, wow, that's a lot of extra calls, right, that we're maybe not making now to follow up with the customer to try to book the move. Well, if you book it on the first call, you don't have to follow up with them, right? So it's just more efficient. If you want to look at it that way, it's just more efficient to book every single move on the first call. So you have to go for it. It's not going to happen, right? And that's why you need to make sure you still have the follow-up. But if it happens on a good majority of them, that's less customers that you're calling back 5 times. And when we talk about the 5X and 5 times, that's only if it takes 5 times. You might call them back the first time or the second time, and they might say, okay, let's go ahead and set things up, right? But it's important to understand how to sell and book a move. So that's really what we're going to talk about in this lesson. Let's jump right into it. What's the purpose of every call? Do you know? Book the move, right? Every single call, yes, you're going to provide customer service. Yes, you're going to provide value. Yes, you're going to give them an estimate. But the only reason you're doing all that is so that you can book the move for your company, all right? So that's the number one purpose of every single call. Whether you book it over the phone, whether you send somebody out to do an estimate, the phone rings, or you dial out and get on a call for a lead, the purpose is to book a move, all right? So what's the secondary purpose of every call? Provide an estimate, educate on the process of getting estimates, build rapport, create interest in your company, right? You need to make them interested in your company. If you're, not going through a script and you're not painting the picture and you're not being memorable to them and they're not interested, you just sound like like you're just reading bullet points off to them, they're not going to be interested. You need to kind of tell them about all the, awards that you have. If you have A rating with the BBB or an A+ with the BBB, you need to tell them about that. You need to create interest in your company. All right. You need to get contact information for follow-up, right? This is really important, right? These are all the secondary purpose of every call. The first one's to book the move, all right? You also want to identify influencers, right? Who are the other decision makers involved in the decision of booking the move, right? A lot of times someone will call, they'll get an estimate, and they'll say, I need to speak with my wife, right? Or they'll say, I need to speak with my husband. All right, so you're identifying who that is. That's usually an easy one, but sometimes, it's I need to speak with my grandmother. She's the one paying for it, right? So it's good to identify who those people are so that you can help guide the conversation. And you're adding to your follow-up pipeline. I mean, if you can't book it on the first call, you're basically adding it into your 5X follow-up, to where you now have a pipeline of people to follow up with to get more jobs booked. All right, so what do I need to do on every call? All right, every single call, these are the things that need to happen, all right, for it to be a good sales call. Be enthusiastic and cheerful greeting with have an enthusiastic and cheerful greeting with an audible smile. I think I mentioned this earlier. You want to make sure that the customer hears you smiling on the other end of the phone. All right? They need to hear your enthusiasm, and you can't just be monotone and, hi, thanks for calling. Yeah, I'll give you an estimate. You bring their energy down. They're not excited. You need to it's moving. I get that, right? I get that it's moving and maybe it's not an exciting thing, but enthusiasm, it radiates out and it'll get them enthusiastic about doing business with your company, all right? So always have an enthusiastic, cheerful greeting and let it be an audible smile. Let them hear you smiling on the other end of the phone. Be interested in what they have to say. You know, a lot of times I'll hear people on the phones and they're just going on and on and on, or somebody calls me and is trying to sell me something. They're just going on and on and on. They're not interested in what I have to say. If I express a concern, you could tell that they're reading off a script and they just go right back to the script. All right, that's not what the script is for. The script is to keep you on track, but if the customer has something to say and they're expressing a concern, right, or have a question, you need to show interest in that. All right, don't just brush it off and keep rolling. So be interested in what they have to say. Tonality is very important, right? We kind of just touched on that with just, being monotone and just reading off a script and here's what we're going to do. You need to have some highs and some lows and have good tonality so they hear the excitement and they hear the enthusiasm in your voice, right? That's a lot different than me saying they hear the excitement and the enthusiasm in your voice, right? The tonality, to be able to bring it high and low, is very important. Separate yourself from the competition. So, never badmouth a competitor, by the way. All right, that's just bad business. It's just a bad practice. Customers don't appreciate it, right? It's just a dirty way to get business. So never badmouth somebody, but you can separate yourself from the competition. Once you're aware of what your competition offers, you can, basically highlight the things that you do differently than other people out there. You don't have to necessarily name names of companies, but you can highlight what you do differently that is unique to your company. All right, so you're basically separating yourself out from the competition. Control the communication of the call. All right, you want, this is a good reason why you're going to have a script. All right, because if the conversation starts getting out of control and start heading in all kinds of different directions, which it can, I'm sure you've had a conversation with someone, a friend, a relative, whoever, and all of a sudden you start talking about one thing and you end up talking about something that's just like way out in left field. There's no control over the conversation, which in a casual conversation is fine, but when you're, running a business, you need to control the communication of the call, right? So, you express, let them, if they have any questions, you show interest in it, but always bring it back to where you were in the script, all right? And be yourself, right? You have to be yourself. So like, I'm sitting here showing you tonality examples and things like that. Be you. And that's the same goes for, when we get into training, we're going to talk about that and how to, train moving consultants. Same thing goes for them as well. They need to be them. They need to have their own unique personality, right? You don't need a bunch of robots. You want everybody to feel comfortable. You want everybody to feel at ease and be themselves. It's very, very important. Know your pitch and stick to the script, period. All right? Only when a moving consultant just gets started should they be reading off of the sales script. By the time they get out of training, they should pretty much know it, okay? And you're gonna see when we get into how to train them, you're gonna see how, a real training course gets them to where they're like a machine, all right? And they're solid, all right? That's how you create rock star moving consultants. You don't just, find them out there, right? You bring them in and you put them through real training, and now they're, they know the script and they stick to the script, all right? But you always have it in front of you because you always need to come back to it if you get taken off track, all right? But you know the script and you stick to it. Ask them if they have a pen and give them your name and the company's name. This is a great, great tool. Anytime you're speaking with a customer, just, randomly just at the end, just say, do you have a pen? Yeah. I have one here. All right, great. Why don't you take down my name? It's Lewis. The name of my company is Moving Mastery. I just want to make sure you have that. My direct number is this. and then you could get into everything else. It's just they wrote your information down because you guided them to do that. They didn't write anybody else's information down, right? So they have your information written down. Everybody else is just emailing them stuff. All right, so always ask them if they have a pen and give them your name and company's name. Give them the number that you are calling from. We've touched on this a few times. You don't ever want to call from one number. In other words, your caller ID reads one number on their phone, but then you give them a different number, right? There's something about it that's just not, it just doesn't look consistent, right? And they kind of wonder what's going on. Like, why am I not calling you back on the number you're calling me from? Where are you actually calling me from? People get a little suspicious when you don't call them and give them the same number that you're calling them from. All right, so make sure you do that. That's an easy fix. Take good notes. Always, always, always take good notes, right? Because whatever they mention during the call, because remember, you're expressing interest in what they have to say. So if they tell you about their little poodle, right, named, Fufu, right, then you should write that in the notes, because that's another point that you could bring up when you're calling them back for follow-up, right, for rapport building. So just write down notes always about the job, of course, right? That's a given. Anything that has to do with their job and the move and the details of their move, but write down anything and everything that's gonna help you, build rapport with them later on as well. Be straightforward and honest, right? So if your sales team has their script and rebuttal and frequently asked questions book in front of them, they should be able to answer every and any question that the customer should have. And if they don't know the answer to something, they should say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but let me find out from someone who does. Hold on one moment, all right? Never, never, never allow your reps to just start saying whatever they want to say. Make it clear to them that if they don't know the answer, it's okay for them to go to a manager. It's okay for them to go to you. It's okay for them to ask somebody else, all right? Don't reprimand them because they should know that. Keep an open environment to where they're not afraid to come ask questions that they don't know the answers to, all right? It'll help keep them honest and straightforward with their pitch. Believe you can book the move on every call. Now, you have to go into the call believing I'm setting up this reservation right now, okay? I'm gonna book this job right now. That's the purpose of the call. Yes, you're gonna go through the secondary purpose of the call, giving them their estimate, getting information, but the purpose of the call is to book the move. That's the whole reason you're on the phone, all right? You, your consultants, whoever, that's the reason you're on the call with the customer. So make sure you believe that you can book it on every call. Identify their concerns and offer solutions. So if they express a concern on the call, you have to be able to spot that, right? You have to be able to identify when they start talking about something that's, they're really concerned about, their piano or their china set that was given to them, by a relative. You need to be able to stop for a minute and say, okay, make a little side note as they're talking, and then circle back and give them a solution. Right? Give them a solution for how you're going to handle their piano. If they have a grand piano, walk them through the process of how you're going to come in. You're going to take the legs off. You have a special dolly. Go through the whole thing. All right? If they have china, start talking to them about packing solutions. So listen, would you like us to do packing for you? This way we can make sure all your china is protected. If they say no, give them solutions for boxes and packing material to do it themselves. So listen to what their concerns are and always offer solutions, all right? Be respectful, always be respectful, right? Not every customer is the most polite, right? They might not be really respectful with you or your consultants. Always be respectful back, okay? Always. Be enthusiastic. We talked about this. Always be enthusiastic. Never monotone. If you need to come out and get your sales team fired up, right, and make them stand up and get some energy going. If they're just like movers, right, if that's how they're answering the phone, movers or moving in storage, they need to be enthusiastic, right? They need to answer the phone. Thank you for calling such and such moving company. My name's Lewis. How could I help you today, right? That is a good way to start off with the customer. Always be enthusiastic. Create urgency. We talked about this a little bit, and we're going to touch on it some more. But when you're calling them back in the 5X follow-up, and you're saying, listen, we're really starting to book up for that day, and why don't we go ahead and get things set up for you as well? You're going to do that on the first call too. You want to make sure that on that first call, you tell them about your limited availability, which is true, right? Even if you have no jobs on the board, you have limited availability. There's only so much that you can book for a day. You don't have unlimited availability, you have limited availability. So you want to create a little bit of urgency and give them a reason why they should book sooner than later. Never badmouth the competition. We talked about this already. It's just don't do it. It's just bad. It's just bad for business. The customer, thinks it's distasteful, and there's just no reason for it. There's enough business in your city for everybody, and if everybody's doing the right thing and if everybody's servicing the customers, there's enough business for everybody. Build rapport. All right, you have to build rapport with the customer. We're going to talk about that. End the call on a high note. Always end the call on a high note. Don't just say, all right, see you later. End the call. All right, great. Well, let's talk tomorrow, or however you leave off with them. Just make sure that it's enthusiastic and they hear the audible smile, because the last few words that you say to somebody when you leave them, this is true even for interaction with somebody. If you notice, I always end the videos enthusiastically, right, on a high note. I'm not just like, all right, I'll see you in the next video. Right? But that's how a lot of people will end the phone call, right? They'll just say, all right, talk to you later, all right? Now, however you interact with regular phone calls on a day-to-day basis, that's up to you. But how you deal with your customers, end enthusiastically, all right? Make them feel good and important when they end and they get off the call. So we're gonna talk about rapport, right? How do you build rapport with a customer? You're on the phone, you're at their house. What is it you're going to do to build rapport? First thing, don't waste their time, all right? There's a big misconception about rapport building. And, we're going to talk about some of the points, but a lot of it's just a big waste of time for people. If they're calling and they want to get a quote or an estimate on a move, they don't want their time wasted. They want to be quick, efficient, all right, and be able to move on with their day. So don't waste their time. They do not want to be your friend, all right? I don't believe in this form of rapport building. It's common, and it's something that, might be the definition of rapport building, which is like try to become their friend, but it doesn't work. People don't want to be your friend, all right? They want to be friendly, but what's helpful is to give them the information that they're asking, to be a professional and guide them in the direction that they need to go, to answer all their questions and concerns and figure out, how you can best help them and give them those solutions. That's building rapport, not like, hey, did you see the game last night? Or, hey, how about this weather, right? That's, it's small little chit chat, but it's not rapport building, okay? You want to build rapport. You want them to view you as a professional, right? They don't need friends. They don't call a moving company to meet friends. They can go on Facebook to meet friends. They don't need to, call the moving company. Just remember that. Be friendly and respectful always, right? So again, you're not trying to be their friend, right? You're not like saying, hey, well, where do you hang out? What part of town? Okay, let's, that's not going to make them want to move with you, okay? And if you've done it in the past, I can understand. I know that that's a common way that people like to build rapport, and it might work sometimes, but if you try this, you'll see this works more often, all right? So even though you're not trying to be their friend, you still want to be very friendly and respectful, all right? Listen and be interested in their unique moving need, all right? You do this every day. Your moving consultants do this every day. You hear the same thing, right? For the most part, there's not many different scenarios. You hear some random things here and there. Somebody has a big snake, they want to move the cage, or, it's just like random stuff. But for the most part, everybody's move is pretty much similar, but not to them, right? To them, You need to show interest in their unique moving need, all right? And make sure that you address it and how you're gonna handle it, all right? Don't make them feel like a number, all right? Make them feel like a unique, special customer that you're gonna take care of. And then always communicate their needs back to them, all right? So if they say, you know, I'm really concerned about the elevator time because we only have from 2 to 4, right? After you're done listening to them, make sure you communicate that back to them, all right? You just basically kind of communicate back and say, okay, so I know there's a concern about the elevator time from 2 to 4, so let's go ahead and, you know, try to find the time that's gonna work for you to where we can make sure that we handle it and get everything done in the time that we have, all right? So listen to what their concerns are, and when you communicate them back to them, it shows them you're listening. They don't know you're listening, but when you communicate it back to them, they're like, he gets me, right? We're on the same page, right? So make sure you communicate their needs back. Provide solutions, always provide solutions. We've talked about this too, all right? So if they have a problem, if they have an obstacle or whatever, provide a solution. Even if you don't provide something that they're looking for, try to provide a solution, right? If they're moving out of state and they need an auto transport company, but you don't handle that, try to have somebody that you recommend, right? If you don't handle storage, if you just do, let's say, local moving and they need storage, go online and help them find a storage unit, right? That's providing solutions. Be a professional. Always be a professional. All right? Don't mistake that you think you understand the type of person that you're talking to, right? And that maybe they're younger or they're this type of person, and then maybe you try to just come out of your professional shell and, you know, drop some curse words on them and just, you know, start telling them, oh yeah, I just last night I was at the club and man, I didn't get home till 5 and then I had to be here at 6, right? You don't do that with a customer, all right? And I say this because I've had moving consultants who've done that type of thing, all right? You have to always be professional, all right? It's for you, it's for your team, everybody in your company. Always agree with them, all right? There's no reason to start an argument with a customer, all right? So agree with them. But then if what they're saying is, you know, not accurate or is not going to work or is not how you're going to actually provide the service, so okay, and I understand where you're coming from. However, I want to offer you this solution, right? And, you know, but if you say, no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You know, you're basically starting an argument, really, all right? So always agree with them and then circle back with a solution. You know, however, we could do it like this, all right? So I want to talk about assuming the sale mindset, all right? Assuming the sale. This is a technique for closing deals that you're just assuming when you get on the call, we're closing it, right? You're assuming I'm booking this move. They called in, they need a mover. We're a mover, I'm giving them a good price, I'm gonna book this job. So view every call as if the customer is wanting to set up their reservation. They just need some information first. This is how you have to program your mind to think about it, all right? They're calling in, they just need some information. At the end of me giving them that information, we're just gonna set up their move. That's the next step, all right? Setting up their reservation is the next logical step after receiving that information, all right? That's just how you have to look at it, right? If it wasn't such a competitive industry and they weren't calling around for several rates, this is how it would be. You know, if you were the only mover in town, they would call you up and they would want some information. The next step is we set it up, all right? So start viewing it that way, because if you put yourself in that mindset, you're gonna be able to assume the sale, and then you're gonna roll right into getting the reservation. Roll right into setting up the reservation, right? When you go back and download the scripts from the Build Your Script module, and you'll see that it rolls right into the reservation, right? Do you want to go ahead and set this up on in the morning or afternoon? Would you like to put that on a Visa or MasterCard, right? You're rolling right into it. So, assuming the sale mindset. This is something that I used to give to my reps just to kind of, have them say to themselves, just so they get like what I'm trying to say right now, okay? The customer is calling to set up their move with my company. To provide excellent service, I need to understand their unique moving needs and answer all their questions. I need to gather information about their move so that I can provide them with the proper manpower and equipment. I will use this information to provide them with an accurate estimate. Once I have done all of that, I will set up their move reservation, fulfilling their need and the reason for their call, which will complete my duty and provide them excellent service. All right? It's just a way of looking at it to understand that, if your approach to sales and your mindset is, I'm just giving estimates all day and seeing who bites, that's what's going to happen. But if you get yourself kind of in the mindset that, hey, this is what I'm doing, and at the end of the call, we're going to set up the reservation, then that's what you're going to do, right? If your mind's focused on that, that's what you're going to do. You're not going to book all the jobs. This isn't a magic trick, right? But it's just getting yourself in the proper mindset. Yes, people are not going to book with you. Yes, you're going to have to still do follow-up, all right? But this is going to help you close more deals, just being in the right mindset. Listen, more than half the battle is mindset, all right? So getting yourself in the right frame is important. So let's talk about rolling into the reservation, all right? So give you an example. I actually have a morning and afternoon spot available. Which would you prefer, all right? That's an example. At the end of the move, instead of saying, would you like to set that up? You give them their estimate, you go through the whole script, and you just go into, I actually have a morning and afternoon spot available. Which would you prefer? All right, that's rolling right into it. Or you take all their information and then you say, okay, you're all set. I just need a $100 deposit to complete your reservation. Would you like to put that on a Visa or MasterCard? All right. Now, obviously, when we're talking about deposits, make sure wherever you're located, your state, your tariff, interstate allows you to take a deposit. But this is just giving you an example how to roll right into the reservation. You're going to love our movers. They're going to do a great job for you. Is the email that I have the best way to send you your reservation confirmation? Right? So you're just assuming, right, that they're going to book, right? You're not saying, okay, is that a yes or a no, right? Like, do you want to go with me or do you not want to go with me? You're just assuming they want to go with you. Let them say no, right? But just roll right into it. You're just providing great service. You gave them all the answers to their questions. You provided them a great script. You painted the picture for them. You gave them the pricing. Next step, roll right into the reservation, right? If they say no, if you cannot get a rebuttal, let's talk about the power of a no obligation tentative reservation, all right? So what is a no obligation tentative reservation? A courtesy that you provide the customer that holds a moving reservation for them. There is no commitment by the customer and they have no obligation to honor that reservation. You do not take a deposit and they could cancel at any time. Right? So you're like, what's the point of that? If they could cancel anytime, you don't take a deposit, there's no commitment by them, what's the point? Right? So this is what you say to a customer at the end of a call, right? If they say no, they're not ready to go with you, you've gone through your rebuttals, this is what you say. Okay, well, what I'll do for you then is I'll set you up on a tentative reservation just to hold the spot. There's no cost or obligation whatsoever. If you need to change the time, date, even cancel, it's not a problem at all. It's just a courtesy we provide all our customers. How can they say no to that, right? They're going to say, okay, yeah, sure, right? Okay, sure, right? But what'll happen as you start doing this is, first of all, you need to make sure that you do this every single time, all right? But the purpose of this is that even though it's a no obligation tentative reservation, when they hang up the phone, they still feel a sense of obligation to call you back, right? If they call another company and they get a quote and an estimate that's similar to yours, and that company says, hey, would you like to set that move up with us? They're thinking, all right, well, if I set this move up with them, then I have to call that other company back and tell them to cancel my tentative reservation. Chances are they'll just tell the other company, nah, that's all right, I'll call you back. And then they call you and say, you have all my information already? Go ahead, let's set it up, all right? And a lot of times what happens is before you even get off the call, once they've already kind of made that, commitment, even though it's not a commitment, they made that tentative reservation, they felt a sense of relief. They felt that task on their to-do list of fine movers. They felt that check go next to that task, like they just got that done. And even though it's tentative, by the time you get off the call, they might say, you know what, let's just set it up, all right? I'm telling you, try it. It works, tremendously. All right, it's a nice gesture too. It creates value, all right? You're just kind of holding a spot for them, allowing them to go shop around, but you're gonna hold a spot. You're not being, all right, well, you better call me back soon. I'll tell you what, I'll hold a spot for you. It's just a tentative reservation. There's no obligation. If you need to change the time, date, cancel, it's not a problem whatsoever, right? It's a nice gesture. It will increase your booking percentage, hands down, all right? We already talked about some of the reasons why. And it creates an extra step for the customers that if they don't go with you. We just talked about that. So if they call another company and they get a price, they now have to call you back to cancel the tentative reservation. They might not always call back, but they'll call back to cancel the tentative reservation to go with the company. So it kind of creates an extra step for them where it just makes it easier to go with you. They will feel relief. We talked about this. They checked off their to-do list. People love to check off their to-do list, right? If you have a to-do list and all of a sudden you start crossing stuff off the to-do list, it feels good. So if they set up this reservation, even though it's a tentative, part of them felt like they did it, it's done, and they feel what that feels like for it to be, off their list, and they're just ready to do it. Many customers will book on the first call after you set up the tentative reservation, right? So basically you set up the tentative reservation and you're just getting a little bit more information. Maybe at this point you don't have their full address, so you get their full address. And again, they feel that feeling of the relief of it checking off their to-do list, and they're like, you know what, let's just set it up, right? I'm telling you, put this in place, you're gonna hear that exactly. They're gonna go, you know what, let's just set it up, all right? So listen, all this stuff makes a big, big difference, all right? So we're gonna get into training and how to train your moving consultants, but all of this is all training for your moving consultants too, right? How to teach them what to say on every call, and it just makes such a big difference, right? Think about it. If you have a moving sales consultant, and let's say they're making, they're booking $40,000 a month in business, all right, which we're going to get to that, but that's like the minimum of what somebody should be booking on a commission scale. We'll talk about that later. But let's say they're booking $40,000, and let's say you're able to get a few tweaks and modifications, and get them. We're going to get into enhancement training, how to get them up to the next level. But even some of the stuff that we've gone over, right? It's just going to help each and every single sales rep raise their game up, right? Because you're giving them the tools that they need to be successful. So let's go back. You have somebody making, booking $40,000 in business a month, one person. Let's say you got them to $60,000 a month, all right? Which still isn't, incredible, but it's still, it's decent, right? So now they're booking $60,000. You know how much that is a year? $240,000 a year from one person, right? So imagine you can do that with however many reps you have. Imagine you can get them to raise their game up to be able to book more jobs, because let me tell you, they can book more with the same amount of leads and calls they have now, right? If you don't believe that by now, if you put all this stuff in place and don't believe that everybody could raise their level, I'm not saying that they're going to go from 40 to 60 or whatever. You might have people that are, all your reps might be doing 80,000 a month already. But what I'm saying is, if you can help them raise it, with just this one example from 40 to 60, it's $240 a year per rep, $240,000. Think about what this kind of stuff can do to your business, all right? Selling is important, all right? We're gonna get to, coming up in the next video, we're gonna talk about how to overcome objections, right? When someone says, no, I'm not ready to book, what you do. But listen, make sure you take some of this stuff. We're going to get into how to train your consultants, but if you see stuff here that's going to be helpful for them, if you see stuff that you're like, hey, they need to hear this, let them hear it, or go repeat it to them yourself. All right, start putting some of this stuff in place and you're going to see such a tremendous difference. All right.